Gentlemen, I have a question for you. And we'll start with you, Dan, since you're the guest.
Sure, why not?
If you had to choose, these are always good.
Yeah.
You get a job writing for DC or Marvel, you can pick a high-paying job. Would you take it if it meant you could no longer create your original characters, your original work, or tell your original stories? It all had to be, your Batmans and Wolverines and stuff.
I mean, basically, if you're working for Marvel or DC anyway, chances are you're not going to have the time to write or draw your own stuff.
That's a fair point.
That is fair.
Yeah. So basically, I would say, yeah, because basically I would be working for them anyway for full time if I'm doing, a project and it pays well enough. And I'm sure it's not going to be like, here's a job forever from DC and Marvel.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be great if it was just, a temporary thing, get your name out there more and stuff. But if it was, what if it was a permanent situation, though? Which wouldn't happen, like you said. But Fantasyland, you take this job, you played your hand with the devil, and now the other side is all you're doing is Batman stories.
Geez, that's a tough one. If you ask, here's my answer. If you ask the Dan Nokes of 2002, when I first started getting into comics, he would have said absolutely. If you ask the Dan Nokes now, he said probably not. Because I kind of think of myself now as I relate to that scene in the Shawshank Redemption when Red is at his final parole hearing, and basically, frankly, Sonny Jim, I don't give a, I kind of feel like that to a certain degree now. Like when I first got in, I think my goal in comics was like to have that springboard to get to do DC and Marvel stuff. But now that I've done a good half a dozen graphic novels, and so I don't know if I can part from that. That's what makes me happy, because it gives me the most creative control, the most freedom, the most ability to express myself exactly the way that I want to.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Do you choose the road of the starving artist, or do you pick the commercial money job?
Yeah.
And also, if you're getting into comics, especially when you're young, it's all sunshine and rainbows, and then you find the dirty underbelly of the comic world, where you listen to a lot of Alan Moore lectures, and then you're like, never mind. What about you, Spencer?
I think, given now, I would probably lean closer to either the Marvel or DC gigs, because I've always just had such an affinity with those characters. And then you said it's a paying job, and hopefully if you're doing one of those, you can become an exclusive talent, because those guys get benefits and healthcare and stuff like that.
True.
Which is always nice.
No more day job either. That's another thing. You don't have to work a 9 to 5, because that is your 9 to 5.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I always like the challenge of trying to come up with something new for existing characters. I like just as much of coming up with your own, you know what I mean?
Right.
Be able to put your own spin and a mark on a character or a certain title after a while, I think would be pretty cool too. And like Dan said, even the best of writers and artists don't get full-time long-term, they normally at least take a break to go and, do their own stuff, eventually and stuff like that.
Just a hired gun.
Yeah.
Like I said, working for Marvel or DC or any of the independents, you're basically a contract player for the most part.
Right.
There are very few full-time employees in the creative fields at a major company that they're pulling a regular paycheck. So being from that too, it's fine. And I think after a while, you also sit there and think it's Marvel and DC have been doing this for about 80 years now.
Yeah.
And the superhero genre pretty much it's kind of I would liken it to rock and roll at this point. At what point are you going to bring something totally new and totally off, within the genre of rock music? It's when are you going to bring something that's a major paradigm shift from what's being put now? You put out a story. I do a lot of conventions, and I often run into a bunch of kids or people in their 20s or even the early 30s that come up and want to pitch their comics. And I want to say a good 85 to 90% of the time, it always goes off with okay, here's my pitch. It's about a superhero who it's all right, you're just pitching me Batman in a tutu. It's
yeah.
That would suck. Having to deal with that. I don't think I would have the patience.
Yeah.
So there's your two sides of I like that. Those two sides of the coin there. We had both sides. I'll be the tiebreaker. I would pick the starving artist route, but that's because I'm a fiction novelist, or wannabe, so probably going to be obscure for a very long time anyway. You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, as always, Spencer, the Philadelphia Philistine Church. Who created that name? Not mine. I was not the creator of that name. Our special guest today came up with that name, and that is Mr. Dan Nokes, artist, writer. You're a man of actually many trades now. Novelist, I could throw that on there. Before I kick things off to you, I will just go ahead and go through your bibliography so the people can look up some of your work. Dan has recently, that was just last year, I believe, you published your first ever prose novel, Kevin, or the Latter Days of Romulus Augustulus, Last Emperor of Western Rome. I really want to ask you about that too, because we'll get to that. But for a first novel, that was not what I expected coming from the guy who's been dealing with the chicken for so long. Yeah.
Well, I'm a huge history fan to start off with, and I've always loved stuff like Python and the Holy Grail, Life of Brian, History of the World Part 1. I kind of like the realm of historical comedy and kind of wanted to explore that field.
I still need to check that book out. I talked to Dan off air before. We'll get into this later. I promised I was going to wait till near the end, but there was an Amazon situation, so I couldn't order the book directly from Amazon, which is normally how I get my books. There just hasn't been a convention where I was able to run into him. You've also done The Paranormals, which is over 10 years old now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually, technically this year is the 20th anniversary of when I put out the first issue.
So you're going to do a 20th? Because I think I bought the 10th anniversary issue. That's what it was.
Yeah. I don't know yet. Everything depends on how quickly my current project gets wrapped up. If I have time, I mean, I technically have. I'm going with a new printer once again, so I had to recently re-edit the 10th anniversary. But I kind of wouldn't mind doing a full-on edit of that now that I have like an actual editor to help me out with all the grammatical mistakes I made in my 20s.
Was that your first real work you did? Like your first graphic novel?
I did a book before that called The Reptile and Mr. Amazing, which kind of like when I would have my day jobs, I would just kind of work on my lunch break or when I got home at night. And that was kind of like over the course of, I'd say 5 to 7 years, so from 96 to 2002. I have this thing about looking at my older artwork. It's like I put it up at one point. I put it up for free for people to read, just because I'm at the point where I can't charge people money for this. I still think it's a good story, but the older my art gets, the more I don't want to use the word repulsed, but it's kind of like looking at pictures of yourself in high school, like during, I guess, your goth phase or your pop punk phase. Like what? Like you would go back, if you went back in time, you'd probably beat the shit out of yourself.
Well, that's a good sign of creative growth. Like if you go back and you look at that stuff and you're like, oh man, that's the best stuff that I've ever done. That's probably a sign of not good things in the present.
Since I've been doing so many literary submissions this year, I've gone back through a lot of my old stories. Some of the first things I've finished, and actually edited, and I'm like, why was I writing like that? It's terrible. Most of them were just bad impersonations of, Stephen King or whoever I was reading at the time.
Yeah.
You've also, this one I think has actually got you booted from Amazon. Correct me if I'm wrong. Adam and Eve, Bizarre Love Triangle in the Zombie Apocalypse.
Yeah, that's the specific one. That one's let's see, I put it out in 2000. It's about 12, 13. I had the 10th anniversary Kickstarter that I put out 2 years ago for that one. That was a fun book to do. It was basically me. I lived in Southern Maryland at the time, and I just kind of wanted to write a book, kind of like you were saying about Stephen King. I kind of wanted to write something about where I lived. And I guess one day, kind of thought, well, what would happen in Calvert County, Maryland, if the zombie apocalypse came? And basically my answer was, not much different than it is now.
Yeah. The next one on here, I actually really liked. I think we did when DPW was still a website. When we had that up, I think I actually reviewed, either I did or you did, I don't remember, Impossible Space Tales of the Last Pit Stop, and this one was an online only. Did you ever get around to printing this?
Oh yeah, it's in print.
Okay, I need to pick that up because I actually really enjoyed that one.
I put out the first 11 issues online, and then when the 12th and final installment came out, I put a Kickstarter out. I was like, my rationale was like, okay, I gave you 11 issues for free. If you want to read the last one, you got to pick this one up.
It's actually kind of a good move because you cement the readership, and then you make them pay for the final, which they should be paying anyway.
it's a very odd marketing strategy, but it paid off in the end. And it's actually to date my absolute best-selling title. Whenever I go to a show, it's almost always the one that like sells well or even sells out.
Well, it's kind of leaning towards Clerks with aliens, which is two great things put together. So I just like the characters are so fun in that.
Yeah, like, it's definitely. I tell people it's workplace horror stories, but in space. It's, I want to say, like, I worked a lot of horrible day jobs. All of them were horrible, but most of them were just, like, tedious and not what I wanted to do. It was a paycheck, basically.
Yeah.
You meet interesting people. A lot of times it was in, like, the service industry, either food service or working at various warehouses or stuff like that. And it's kind of like, the characters are amalgamations of people that I met in that, I guess, 15, 20 year period. But I just, turned them into aliens.
Well, from what I remember, too, like the art in that, like it seems like your art style got more consistent and you were falling into your more mature way of drawing. And, you do like the colorings and stuff, too, right?
Yeah. Basically, Adam and Eve is where I discovered ink wash, and Space Tales is where I kind of discovered sort of like the halftone, duotone patterns on Photoshop and kind of incorporated the two together. It was also the last. It was the last black and white book that I had done too. And I still love black and white, but at some point, like, I literally, like, man, everybody has this idea in their head that black and white comics by default are less than color, even though it's like, some of the best stories I've ever read were in black and white. And it was, like I said, it wasn't necessarily that I was trying to be cheap on anything. It's like I just didn't know how to digital color it at the time, which I eventually did with the next project.
Well, I think just a simple, you look at mangas.
Yeah.
That just proves the point that black and white could be great. So,
right.
As long as the art's good, it doesn't really matter. And this last one, this kind of leads up to your Kickstarter. I guess maybe directly. I haven't read this one. Chicken, USDA rejected.
That's definitely about the rooster in question. That was his first graphic novel. Basically, the premise was he's in Baltimore at a convention there at the Baltimore Convention Center with me. I go home for the night, and it's kind of like those, I guess, like old Tex Avery cartoons where they would shut down the either the toy store or the grocery store or whatever, and then all the, I guess, either the toys or the groceries would come alive. But it's just basically he gets up, he gets out, he goes into the streets of Baltimore. I tell people to think of it as Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas meets Golden Books by way of Blues Brothers.
Oh, interesting. What, for our listeners who are not aware of your foul-mouthed cock, what are the origins of the chicken? Because you had the stuffed chicken, which I believe mysteriously vanished on one of your, travels around the globe.
Yeah, basically the original Chicken 1.0. My stepfather worked for the county waste management, and he comes home one day with this gigantic chicken. He's like, "Here, you want this?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" I just kind of sat in my room for a while until one day I decided to hey, I think I'm going to dress this thing in cosplay and bring it to a show for a laugh. And I put him in a little, I went to the local Target, picked up a Thor outfit, dressed him up as Thor and brought him to the show. It's like, what the hell is that? It's like, he's my new mascot. His name, what's his name? Chicken. Basically, I just kept bringing him to shows until people he started developing sort of like a little cult audience. And people kept asking, well, is he going to get his own comic? It's like, well, when I'm done with Space Tales. And then I finished up Space Tales, and I was like, all right. At that point, I've been sitting on the story for about 3 years. It kind of evolved. The original story and what became USDA Rejected are vastly different from one another. But yeah, what eventually became USDA Rejected was I worked on during 2019 and in 2020.
You've built up quite the audience. And because your Kickstarter you have now is already doing decent numbers. And from the ones I've watched previously, it's like you always exceed the Kickstarters pretty early on. You always, which I think would be in most Kickstarters, you have a week or so where it's really booming, probably slows down or, plateaus a little. But yeah, you've always, from what I've seen, exceeded your Kickstarters. how, because we've thought about doing things on Kickstarter, but I don't even know how to get into it, let alone succeed at it and market it. But how did you get into it, and how are you able to promote it so well that is it just because you have such a big audience now that people just want what you're creating?
I would say right now the people. Last time I checked my my Kickstarter, it was about 40 backers, and I'm going to say at this moment, probably 35 of them are regulars from other Kickstarters. So that's like my I would say probably out of that almost $2,800, I would say probably close to 80% of that is from people that have backed something before for me or picked something up at a show. So yeah, I'm really happy about that. So now the question is, can I bring on some more of those people in the next 3 weeks to get up to my goal? Because it's definitely the most ambitious target goal that I've set. I want to say my record was about $3,000 that I asked for, and about $4,205 for how much I made. So this is the most I've asked for from a Kickstarter. And I'm kind of hoping, at least a bunch of my people that haven't pledged yet are going to come out and pledge. And then I'm hoping, some new people jump on board as well.
Well, from like the standpoint of the general public who just, maybe they've supported Kickstarters or watched Kickstarters for just various things. Usually they go up to, 10,000, 50,000, just ridiculous numbers. So you don't think of it as that difficult of a thing. But when you're actually just creating, like, say, a book, like something, artistic or simple, to get that kind of money, like $4,200, like, to me, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine getting that kind of money just for my work. I'd be happy if I got a publishing deal where they gave me an advance that was that much. Yeah. But to actually have people want it, like, that has to feel good just to have, because unlike when you go to a show or something, you might be able to sell just through your sales pitch, be able to sell a book, but the person might not necessarily be excited always, because you kind of have that carnival aspect where it's like, I sold them, but they seemed a little iffy. They bought it. Maybe they just wanted to be nice. But at Kickstarter, there's none of that. They're getting it because they want it. Like, they really want it. So that just has to feel amazing, I would imagine.
Well, the tricky thing that I've always seen with like backing Kickstarters or just watching Kickstarters is the double-edged sword of the stretch goals.
Yeah.
Because, like, those can bring them, but then, like, that's more, you have to make more money for those, and that's more time to make that stuff and to produce it. And, like we were saying, like, with novels, that was another thing. It'd be like, what can you really do for stretch goal for a novel? You can get, like, a bookmarker or something like that, But at least with,
I'm always empathetic in general towards authors who do prose novels, because, like, let's say I'm at shows, I got, I have finished artwork. So it's basically, they just have to look at the artwork and say, I like that. I don't like that. And either, buy the original artwork or the poster or the comic, at least based on, a first impression of whether they like that art style or not. Like, an author has to rely pretty much solely on, like, marketing and salesmanship skills. Because, like, you can't, like, look at this sentence right here. This paragraph is amazing. This one, if you don't buy it right here, then you just don't appreciate literature the way that you should.
Look at the nuance of this paragraph. Look at the Sesquipedalian style that I've incorporated. Like, you can't do it.
Oh, you see this font? Look at this font.
Yeah. Look at the formatting. Impeccable.
14 point. What do you got to say about that?
If you want to talk about double-edged sword, this is a straight samurai sword. When you are a writer of prose novels, as we've talked to many at different conventions, especially when we were doing the press gigs, they are not the most social bunch, and they're not good at marketing. Most writers suck at marketing, so it's just like, to be able to sell that novel, like, they just sit there at the blank table, and it's depressing. And even us, who, like, we usually, when we go to shows, we buy, like, I try to buy 2 or 3.
Yeah.
If it's at least something I'd be slightly interested in. The problem is, a lot of the times it's either, genre stuff I don't really care about, or, like, the person seems very disinterested in even being there because they're probably not selling any. And then, I go up and look, and then you see that little spark in their eye. Oh, maybe they'll buy the novel, but they don't know how to sell it. There's only, like, I'm probably not going to read it because I just don't have the time. And I'm like, and it's like $15. It's really hard to sell an indie novel. Even if you're published by, Penguin or something, it's still hard to sell a novel. So I couldn't imagine.
Honestly though, like a lot of artists are not much better because I mean a lot of them are like pretty much self-contained. I'm looking for the word introverted. That's the word I'm looking for. A lot of them are incredibly introverted to start off with it, and I know when I first got it in, like the idea of like selling my artwork was like selling my children. Like I just found it like repellent at first, and then after like money started coming in, and the fact that I kind of had to keep producing and producing, I kind of eventually I boiled it away to a certain point, that feeling to a certain degree. But a lot of artists will just sit there with their heads buried in their sketchbook or on their phone and just not really sit there and respond to an audience. I don't think they want to be salespeople, and they kind of have this attitude. It's like, look at the artwork, it's amazing, it'll sell itself, and they don't realize, yeah, your artwork might be good, but guess what? So are the 50 other artists that are here. All these other like name brand properties that people know that you're competing against as well.
Especially when you're like your booth is next to one of those stupid print booths that just are a bunch of pre-made Punisher prints and stuff.
Or just some kind of like arts and crafts booth. Like like this isn't.
Or Funko Pop booths.
Oh, yeah. The Funko Pop.
Well, at least with the Funko Pop, there's a good chance you can maybe cipher off some of that traffic.
Yeah. Hey, kid. I know you don't read, but come over here. Look at my art.
I can draw things and pop up, make them look like pop-ups.
I was at a library convention last year, and this is around, I guess, July or August, and I basically had people go up to me. I think my favorite one was like, I pitched my book. It's like, I really don't like to read, and I'm not into comics. It's like, what are you doing here? Like, this is like Dracula in church territory for you, buddy. I suggest you probably want to turn around and get out as quickly as possible.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but if it's possible, can you regale us with just a few of maybe like your con pet peeves, like the list of things that people do, like maybe they come up and take a picture without asking and then just leave, or I know you've talked about I think on Facebook you've talked about I don't read, or just like stupid things like that. Or what ones really get on your nerves?
Like prideful illiteracy is up there for me. Also, treating my booth like it's a receptacle for your stuff. Like people will just walk up to you, not engage with you at all, like throw their like food or their book bag or whatnot, or their loot up on your table while they're talking on the phone or talking with their friends, and then standing in front of a booth while you're trying to sell stuff is another one that really gets my goat. Just, I think that all fits under the like not acknowledging my presence. Like you're really standing up at my booth. Like I said, and a lot of times like, well, I spent a lot of money to be here. It's like, I spent a lot of money to be here too. I think that's an annoying thing. I think another one, and I don't hate all. It's going to be a thing about cosplayers, and not all cosplayers, but the ones that commit to characters so much that like they don't know. Either they don't know or don't care that they're irritating the hell out of you. Like I want to say Deadpool cosplayers and Joker cosplayers commonly fit into this category, where like the Joker cosplayer will sit there and like laugh at the top of his lungs and immerse themselves into the character. And like, dude, if you're not going to get anything, just please leave. Like,
I remember one specific year. I don't remember if it was the Sci-Fi Con or if I saw you maybe like a Wizard World or something. I can't remember what it was. I don't think you've done Three Rivers, have you?
I did it a long, long time ago when it was at the mall, but I haven't done it since it's moved to the convention center.
We've been to the mall one, but I don't think it would have been that one. I just remember one time I was trying to go up to your booth for the longest time, and there was this it was like a dead.
I think I remember that.
The dancing Deadpool with like a boombox, and I think there was like some shittily looking anime, like girls, like I don't know what their cosplay was, some kind of anime, and they just wouldn't move, but their backs were facing you. And I just remember your face. You looked like you wanted to hatchet them in the back of the head. I was just like, why? Like, how do you have that bad of social awareness? I don't understand.
Yeah, again, that falls under that whole like ignoring like the idea of like, yes, I totally acknowledge you are here to have fun and find fun things to either enjoy or take home with you, and that is your purpose. And I totally acknowledge that. I totally respect that. But also respect the fact that this is my job. I'm here to, try to help make an income, to help feed my family, to help, push my books and my wares. Please let me be able to do that. If this is quote unquote my airspace. If you're going to sit there for like 20 minutes and have a conversation, guess what's not going to happen? People are not going to walk up to my booth, cut through you to come see me.
Well, not only are they not buying anything and they're being a nuisance, but they're causing other people who might want to buy something from you to avoid the whole area. Yeah. Because a lot of times when I see that, I just I'm not going, because I'm an introvert too. I was like, I don't want to deal with that. Because again, no social awareness. So if you try to walk through, chances are Deadpool might start humping you or something. Yeah. He just doesn't care. Yeah. It's like, get away from me.
Well, that's why I always said there should be like a cosplay section. Like they can walk around the floor and stuff like that, but there should be a section for cosplayers where they can do their their pictures or their silliness and you know what I mean.
Well, fortunately, the last few shows, the bigger shows we went to, I've seen mainly because they do the cosplay events.
Yeah,
we're gonna have the judging and stuff. That's probably when we went to Cleveland and stuff, but it wasn't a set place for them. It's just where they seem to gravitate toward. So they were for a good portion of the show over there, but they did their rounds and dancing and stuff along the floor. And I'm just like, why? You just want to be seen. I get it. It's
especially
fun,
when you have some big, you have these 10-foot wings on, and you're in a mech suit,
But then people keep. Well, that's another thing though, because they stop you. If you have a booth there, you have the big mech guy. Someone wants a picture with the mech guy. Whose booth does he stop? Probably Dan's booth. And then he's dwarfed. He can't. He's overshadowed. You can't see him behind there. And then the 20 minutes of pictures.
Yeah, because it's never if the guy stops, it's not going to be just the one person and he moves on. It's like that guy, he's taking pictures. And then literally it's anywhere between 5 or 6 people to 20 or 30 people are literally turned your booth into a picture, a photo mat. And I'm like, yeah, guys, this isn't helping me at all. But another one you were touching on is when people walk up to my booth, don't acknowledge me. Just start flipping through my stuff, grab their camera, and start taking pictures of everything. And basically, at one point, it's I'll start doing my pitch and being annoying back to them. It's dude, if you're not going to acknowledge my presence and you're just going around taking pictures of stuff and you have no plans to buy anything, I'm going to ignore you until you leave.
That is, I don't even know how you solve that one.
Yeah.
Because part of you wants to say, well, maybe they're just very awkward and they're taking pictures because they want to send it to somebody who might like it. I've done that, but I've asked.
Yeah, I've always, anytime that I'm hey,
I start polite. I try. I know in general conventions are full of introvert. It's a petri dish of social malady. So I don't want to go and judge right away. That some people might have ADD. Some people may be on some level of the spectrum. And I don't want to go and immediately think that guy's an asshole. I try to start with that. But some people you can pick from right away that they're just there to not pay for anything, take a bunch of pictures, put them up on Instagram. It's oh, this is going to blow you up. It's no, you're not. I've never seen oh my God, this guy's the serious influence to put stuff. And then suddenly I'm getting a tidal wave of orders.
Dan, don't you know how exposure works?
Yeah,
that's what we writers get paid in these days.
Yeah. It's what's the old adage? People die of exposure.
Yeah, that's about right.
The Donner Party were all creative types.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Before we move on to the next topic, I do want to address one more con-related nuisance. How many times, you probably can't count at this point, but how often, let's say generally during a show, does somebody come up, you give them your whole spiel, your whole sales pitch, and they sit there and stare at you stone-faced and then just leave?
More than once.
I think that would drive me nuts more than anything. Just because you're putting so much effort, and it's if you're not interested, just say you don't care, or just walk. I don't know. I'd rather you just turn your back and walk away mid-speech than me finish it, and then you just
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. The mid-speech one, I guess most people will listen through all the way, just in some idea of fulfilling a social contract. I'm not a huge egomaniac or anything, but I'll say I'm one of the best pitchmen at a convention that I know. So I guess, and so I think people will at least listen to it to the end. People feel an obligation. Okay, let me get to the end, And then if I really had no intention of buying anything, I'll go flip through little things and then I'll walk away. That's kind of that's the polite, genteel way. And like, okay, I'm fine with it. But the ones who just kind of stare at you dead face, like, and then turn around and go away, those are bad. The ones, but I actually find the mid-pitch one a little worse because I just feel like I wasn't like, if you didn't want anything from me, why did you come up in the first place?
Yeah. See, I would feel like I didn't want to make them feel obligated to stand there and listen to me talk.
Yeah.
But again, I would rather them say, I'm not really interested.
Yeah,
like,
I'm just flipping through, just seeing what you know.
Like if you just walk away, yeah, you're a dick. And if you listen all the way and you're just kind of, I don't know. It's hard because as, frequent con goers as we are, it's a lot, like you get that carnival atmosphere and sometimes they're hungry for you.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's been times when I've like sipped through, like I went to somebody's table checking out their stuff and they give me a thing. And you try to be polite, but there's been times like halfway through the pitch, I'm like, I'm not gonna like any of this stuff. But
see, I'm the type of, I guess shopper would be the right word, but when I go to a con, I like to be left alone and look at the stuff before the sales pitch. Mm-hmm. I'd rather kind of look around, and then if I'm interested, I would not negotiate, but I would kind of instigate the conversation a little bit because I've done that many times. But at the same time, I mean, how many people would you lose if you were the selling stuff and you didn't say anything? That goes to our writers who just sit there, I'm not interested.
Well,
I don't care.
Like you said, like how many times have we gone to a table and we've had to ask the person?
Yeah, that's always awkward too. Or James O'Barr's passed out drunk.
Yeah,
that's always an interesting one. Moving on, I'm really interested in how you came up with Kevin because I'm also a fan of history. I'm always studying these things and like just the whole aspect of the last emperor of Rome. I can find you can have a lot of fun with. I'm assuming, because I haven't read it yet, I'm assuming it's more of like a satire or comedy.
Yeah, it's definitely satire comedy. I try to maintain certain historical accuracy to a certain extent, and I kind of also try to put historical commentary to a certain degree, or not necessarily social commentary, but societal commentary. I think is the more of the act. Like for example, the book takes place in the year 500. And the idea of it's 25 years since the last emperor of the West has been deposed, and the idea of being what it is to be Roman becomes sort of a more amorphous concept at that point. Like I think there's a certain there's a point where he's sitting at like a delegation from the Eastern Empire showing up, and so many people are dressed in, I guess what they say, their idea of what Roman is. And I sort of equivocate it to people who dress in like Spirit of Halloween costumes as Julius Caesar or something like that. It's like they all have their idea of it, but is it really the Roman Empire of Caesar Augustus and Tiberius? No, it's not. It's been like that idea. It's like the Empire of Caesar Augustus is different from, say, the Empire of Commodus or the Empire of Constantine in the early 4th century. Like it all kind of I mean hell, look at like fashion that changes in our time from, say, the 1980s to present.
Yeah. Did you play, I mean, you were talking about just incorporating that kind of stuff. Did you play at all with the language of maybe going, obviously you're not going to go hard with it, but doing any kind of like biblical Latin or just like the way they speak? Would it be more biblical Roman style, or did you just go like forego that and just kind of go into more of just like, this is the story, it's going to have like a modern, the way they speak would be more modern?
It's mostly an English vernacular. Like it's definitely I kind of wrote it in the tone in my head. It seems like 80s or 90s British sitcoms that I used to watch at that point, like either The Young Ones or Ab Fab or something to that degree. Like the way everybody kind of spoke. I
was just wondering if you did it like more of like, the movie A Knight's Tale where they had like the hard rock and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, it's set in this time period, but it still has a modern aesthetic, so the modern reader could relate to it.
Sort of, but not to the extent of A Knight's Tale, I would say. But there's definitely, I don't go that far. I mean, it's definitely to that extent, but not to that extreme.
How different was your writing process doing a prose novel versus, your normal comic stuff?
to a large degree, very different in the idea that when I write a comic, my style is basically, I equate it to the Marvel method, but I'm playing both the parts of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The idea is with a comic that I am producing, both writer and artist, I don't write a full script. I tend to just think I don't really need it. It's my stuff, so I kind of like it starts off with I call it a story Bible, and which is like a breakdown of the characters, basic plot, etc. And then from there, I just kind of go like, all right, here's a page. I need panel 1 to start here, and I need the last panel to be here. How many beats do I need to get to that last panels, and then rinse and repeat for how many pages it goes. And then once the pages are done and scanned in and colored and all that, I just kind of sit there. It's like, all right, here's panel 1. Here's this character. He's pissed off because somebody stole his last beer. That character would say yada yada, and that's kind of how my comic writing goes. With a novel, obviously there's no pictures other than like I did chapter illustrations at the beginning of each at the end of each chapter, but I still kind of had that story Bible to go with. But from there, I just have to I have to write all the text rather than have the pictures to guide me along. I guess the good thing though is I sat on this story for a good, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years. So that first draft came really easily.
Because you've just been kind of pre-writing it in your head.
Well, I remember when you started talking about writing it, you were just like done. I was like, how the fuck did he write that? I got so mad. I was like, how did he write that fast?
That son of a bitch.
What was the total word count, roughly? Do you remember?
I think it was done in a matter, like, I'm going to say, I went through about 5 drafts total, and I want to say it was like a matter of like, I would say 4, maybe 5 months at most.
But the word count, how the total?
The word count. 92,000, I think. 92,000 words.
That's a good chunk.
So is that like 250 pages, 300, something like that? Like
average
novel.
Pages.
That's usually the sweet spot for novels, 80 to 100. 80 to 100,000. Did you find that the process was at all grueling writing the novel? Because I'd imagine with the drawing, when you do comics, like your mind has to visually interpret the story you're telling versus when you're doing a novel, all of a sudden it's so much different.
Again, I think that I just have the one novel, and like I said, I sat on the story for 5 years, and I almost like play the scenes in my head as if I'm watching a movie of the book. So basically, it's just I almost feel like I'm just the recording, or like I guess a scribe taking down notes of what's going on in my head.
Did you?
I know that seems like incredibly generalized to a certain degree.
Did you hire an editor for it?
Yeah, I did have an editor for it. Yes,
that is a solid move.
Yeah.
When we spoke to, we did not have him on the podcast. Ray Wink, he had like 1 million books. I'd never seen an indie guy have that many books, but he's always at a bunch of conventions. You might have run into him before. He's an older gentleman, but he told us that, which I was very happy to see, because in the indie writing community, I've heard a lot of writers say they don't worry about editors, and I'm like, it's gonna be bad. They don't. Well, Ray said for every single book, all 100,000 books he has, he makes sure he pays for an editor and or knows an editor or something. And I was like, that's a good move. Always do that.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, my girlfriend's my editor, so she actually does that for a living. So it's
nice.
That's like I wish Mindy was an editor.
You're right.
Mindy, edit my work.
And she's a great editor, and if anybody's looking for an editor down the line, on your podcast, hit me up. I'll definitely send you her way.
Very nice.
Yeah.
When we do the outro, you can give her credentials if you want, her website or anything like that.
Yeah.
Have you written any stories before this, prose stories?
I mean, I've written a few short stories and stuff like that, but nothing ever really published. So this is like my first time I sat down and published stuff together and tried to market it as something professional and original.
How did the fans take the book? Were they excited for it because it was something so outside of the wheelhouse of what you normally do? So far,
those that have read it and gotten back to me seem to be very positive about the book. I enjoyed it. I mean, It was challenging to be just the writer on something, or something that's depends entirely upon the written word, upon prose to present itself. Yeah, like I said, I doubt that so far the audience seems pretty positive towards it, and I wouldn't mind doing another novel down the line.
The way I always look at it, if you even got 5 people to read a whole book anymore,
that's pretty impressive.
That's a win.
Yeah. It was the fastest funded Kickstarter. It's the only time I got a Kickstarter funded in one day.
Oh,
damn.
Yeah. It made about, I want to say, a little over $3,000 over the course of the entire Kickstarter. So,
Nice.
and like I said, it was also in a certain way a lot easier to get everything out because basically it was just the books, a sticker, poster, a couple of like a card cover version, and like it was a lot less rewards to have to deal with, so it was a lot easier to get it out to people.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking, there's not much you can do with a novel.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you get signed copy. You always get signed copy.
Yeah.
Like, you get a bookmark. It's just that, you get the original first draft and how shitty it is. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you really give for stretch goals.
I did have T-shirts for it, but I mean, since I'm a quote unquote an artist, that was helpful in that aspect. I did there's some minor characters in the book called the Greater Metropolitan Thieves Guild. The Greater Metropolitan Roman Thieves Guild. And basically, I just kind of gave them like an old school like Union T-shirt.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah, I like that.
They're only in like 3 chapters, but basically, their main deal is like if they don't mind if they call you thieves or anything, they just don't want you to think that like they're unprofessional.
Now I'm gonna look down on you a little bit for this because I'm sure you didn't do it. If you did, then I'm very happy. Did you have a little Easter egg of chicken in your novel?
No, sadly, I don't. I want to say this is the one time. Usually, in my other books, there's some sort of Easter egg towards. I try to reward people that come on board, but Kevin's kind of like off on its own. So I try not to have, and I try to have this book exist a lot more to a certain extent within reality. So like I didn't have.
So he's outside of the chicken verse.
Yeah, like I said, chicken kind of exists within the other comics that I've done. I have another character from Space Tales. His name was Cat Carson that showed up. He was in another book on his own, but he also showed up in Space Tales. But like I said, I have little tiny, sometimes little tiny cameos from other characters in my books. It's my way of rewarding people who come along with me for the journey. But I think for the first prose one, I kind of wanted to do things without a net, and that sort of included not having to lean on previous books for anything.
Well, after having submerged your feet in the waters of the prose novel, do you have any plans for future novels?
So far, not exactly. I think the only thing I've kind of entertained at this point is maybe another historical comedy, maybe a descendant of Kevin. I kind of like the idea of having somebody go around the world through a series of misadventures, accidentally circumnavigating the globe before the Age of Discovery.
That would be fun. Outside of historical type of fiction, I would like to, and this is just a personal preference, I would like to see you do novel versions of your comics. If the Tales of the Last Pit Stop, or like things like that, I think would be really fun. Or like just novellas. They didn't have to be full-length novels. Even
like a short story collections. Even.
Something like that. Because I just think that'd be fun to be able to dive in. Because one thing you can do in the novel better than you can do in a comic is go into the mind of the characters more and develop the characters more. And certain stories you have, I think, would be really fun for that. Even if that was just like you said, the short stories. Even if you did like a stretch goal on a project you're working on, it's like, hey, you get a short story version of something I'm working on. That could be fun.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something to consider down the line. I think my only deal is I'm not much. Once I'm done with a project, I'm not much for revisiting those characters. Every once in a while, I'll do it. Like for, say, Adam and Eve, the 10th anniversary edition, I did a new chapter for. At one point in the book, basically, there's a chapter that ends as he's leaving the bunker, and then it starts off with him maybe a few miles down the road But I never said I never showed what happened to the immediate area that the bunker was located under, and I kind of did a story about a guy that was supposed to be protecting the base, protecting the bunker entrance, and he stayed there the entire time that Adam was underneath, and basically starts slowly kind of losing his mind from loneliness and isolation, with the little bits of periods of like either zombies or raiders and all that coming through. And finally, like he sees the door start to rise. It's like, yes, finally my life's mission has come to fruition. And basically the door just hits him in the head, knocks him over to the side. The main characters go off without seeing him, and he's like, oh, damn it, whatever.
That sounds like a blast.
Yeah.
So novel aside, the chicken Kickstarter, do you have anything else in the works?
Right now, it was basically just getting the chicken thing on the way. I kind of like, I every time I keep telling myself that I have a project, I'm going to say, once I'm done with this project, I'm going to take an extended break. And every time I get to that point, well, I have something in my head. It's like, all right, I'm going to do just this last one. And then I'm going to take that long extended break. It hasn't happened in over 20 years. I've always have another idea that pops into my head that just gives me a compulsion to work on it. So far, that hasn't happened. But there's a lot of time between when this Kickstarter ends and when I have the last book mailed out to everybody else. So something might pop up. Who knows? Part of me hopes that it doesn't, and I actually can go through the rest of the year. It's like, all right, I don't have any new ideas. Like I'm just gonna enjoy going to shows, selling some books, maybe working on an odd work for hire project and commissions here and there, and enjoying doing house chores and getting some odd jobs done.
Do you get that nagging suspicion in the back of your head that if you take an extended break, the whole house of cards you built will just come crumbling down and all your audience will disperse?
People will forget.
They will forget who dang Notes is.
I mean, and that sucks too, that you're kind of judged on. I mean, that's not just me. I think it's everybody that you're, what's the term? Content creator. If you're not putting content out, despite whether the content is good or not good, you just have to put out more of it. After a while, that I think you were talking earlier about a guy that puts out tons and tons of novels. It's like, but I have to, and he might put out excellent work every single time, but I have to sit there and think to myself, like, if I put out 10 novels in 3 years, are they going to be good? Or am I just doing it to put out product? I want to say an example of that. Would you rather have the Rolling Stones discography, or would you rather have the Beastie Boys discography or Radiohead?
Well, judging by some indie romance writers we've accidentally met, we covered on a press gig, writing a book every month or so is not going to be a good book, probably. Your books aren't going to be that well done.
They didn't even check their spelling or anything on that. They just first draft, put it out.
I wish I had the confidence, but no, that's not happening.
Well, the ones that wind up on Amazon or something like that, Velociraptor dinosaur romance novels, or apparently I watched there was a YouTube video about a romance novel based on a living embodiment of the coronavirus or something like that. I just look at it, like this, and I'm thinking to myself, this garbage sells? Yes, because it's garbage. It's junk food novels that sell themselves on the novelty alone.
Does that make you ever just want to sell out real quick and just make a quick buck by writing Bigfoot erotica or something?
I thought that was what the chicken novels were for.
I'm selling out the goddamn chicken novels.
I mean, with chicken, I was I definitely wouldn't say it's selling. It's basically embracing. I tell people when they read USDA rejected, chicken in the books cannot talk. All he says is balk. But his inner monologue, I tell people when you read his inner monologue bits, just read it like Hunter S. Thompson portrayals, either Johnny Depp or Bill Murray. Just read it like Hunter S. Thompson is doing the part of chicken.
So just on every drug imaginable, just blurting out random nonsense. But with slight meaning.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I could do the whole selling out thing, but it is just doing something where it's like, this will get me a lot of attention very quickly.
Well, it's like, are you selling out and then actually getting something for that? Or are you selling out and doing like the Bigfoot erotica and you get like a little spike for like a week or two and then you just are back down to where you're at?
That's where the pseudonym comes in. You know?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You could be Misty Rain and that's your erotica name. I don't think I could write it like a whole book or something along those lines. I just don't think it'd be fun and I would not enjoy it. So there's no artistic merit to such things.
See, I would be worried that I did write it and people were like, "This is great,"
and then that's where that's your wheelhouse.
Like, oh God.
Well, we talked before, and I'm interested in your opinion on this.
I need more canned vegetable porno, man.
Oh man,
I never knew I needed this until I did.
Them mashed potatoes got a deep hole in them. I want your opinion on this, Dan. Sure. What do you think about creating, for you it'd be more than just an author gimmick, but what do you think about creating a gimmick for yourself to help sell your work? Because I know some, like we know Dirk Manning's he's getting ridiculously popular now, and he has, which he's spoken about, you can't see his face.
But also, like, when he's at conventions, he doesn't wear it. Like,
no, it's not a permanent gimmick. It's not a Ric Flair or, one of those guys. But
it's a persona more.
A persona, yeah. So what do you think about creating your own gimmick or persona to sell your work? Or have you done that?
I mean, I kind of have to. I mean, some of it's me. I mean, like at conventions. So some of it's, a misanthropic curmudgeon at the shows who kind of like has this sort of like, again, I've been doing it for 20 years. So to a certain degree, I'm kind of immune from a lot of shows' charm, like or that childlike wonder. A lot of people say, "Oh, look at all this!" Like, yeah, I've seen it, done it. It's like I'm kind of like the people that work at Disney World. It's kind of like the mystique is worn off. I kind of wrote about that in Space Tales too a little bit, like the role of the main character who's. Yes, he works with aliens, but he's basically still in the service industry, and people are, the aliens are still asshole customers.
That was my favorite part. It's just like God damn it, even cool aliens are still asshole, lame, fucking with eggs, like just annoying. This is something that's been bugging me, and I've been meaning to ask you for some time.
Sure.
Now your website, as well as kind of your brand, is 21 Sand Shark Studios. What is the significance of that?
The full name is 21st Century Sand Shark Studios. I grew up watching a lot of Python. It was introduced to me by my parents, who were both fans, and it was I think if nothing else, it was on PBS. So PBS, it must be educational. So one of the regular Python sketches, like a reoccurring one, they would make fun of the 20th Century Fox logo, either 20th Century Frog or 20th Century Bowl or something to that grade. And I kind of thought that was pretty funny, so I kind of ran with that, and I was like, all right, it's the late 80s or so, and I was like, okay, it's going to be the 21st century soon, so I need to call it 21st century, whatever. It's like, all right, what's the most ridiculous thing you can think of off the top of your head? It's like, Sand Shark. It's like, okay, it's 21st Century Sand Shark Studios. And that's kind of, like I said, that was kind of like the brand I was with in like middle school and high school, and it kind of just stayed with me until I, quote unquote, went pro.
That reminds me of that SNL bit from, I think, the 80s or early 90s. I don't remember exactly if it was, I think it was a land shark or something. I just remember, I think it was an update. It would just come and like eat people. It was like really ridiculous.
Usually during the cold open, it was usually Chevy Chase and Jane Curtin. Jane Curtin would like answer the door. Like the most famous one was the Halloween sketch. It's like, it's like, who is it? It's like trick or treat. It's like, no, it's not. I think you're the land shark. Oh.
That's right. It was really big, and I was just like, "What? How do you not know it would be a shark?" Yeah, that's way back. That was before my SNL days. I didn't really watch much of the 70s or 80s stuff. Not to go completely off topic, but I'm sick of people saying that SNL is completely unfunny because I've seen a decent amount of funny things lately. Yeah, it's a live sketch show, so you're gonna have a lot of garbage.
It depends on the guest.
It does depend on the guest. I've seen some bad guests. Also, a lot of times if it's anymore, I don't watch it live. I watch like on YouTube or something. Right. That's very rare I watch it live, but a lot of the times if it's a guest I'm not interested in, I just don't even check it out. unless like their tit falls out or something. You see it on Twitter. It's like, okay, that's interesting that fucking, John Goodman's tit fell out. Well, if it was John Goodman, I would probably watch the whole show anyway.
Right.
But like just from what I watched this season, even though they got rid of a lot of their mainstays left, the new cast seems to be good. Just so you folks know, I always been a big, Dan's a history buff. I also been a history of pop culture, and SNL has been my go-to for a very long time. So I don't think there was a stretch there where it sucked. There's a couple stretches. The 80s, like after Eddie Murphy, it sucked and almost went out of business. And then you had the stretch in like, I don't even know, maybe the mid 2000s. Like I don't think they always had decent characters on there.
It's also like Saturday Night is slowly being like aged out by like technology. Like if it was,
but they've incorporated like the TikTok and just different digital shorts. So I think what it is.
I just mean to have like that small audience on a set, like you know what I mean. Like I just don't think like that's a huge like
a draw anymore.
And to turn in at that certain time of night, every Sat, like you know what I mean.
Right.
Like you said, you either watch it the next couple days or on YouTube or whatever.
It's not must see programming at 11:30.
But what is though?
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
I think to a certain degree, it's also the fact that SNL, when it started, was part of, I guess you could say 70s counterculture, where now it's the establishment.
Yeah. If you're like a mainstay, well, that's how you get on. If you're, you have a big movie coming out, then they're going to put you on. But no longer do they have more obscure people. Yeah. I don't know how we start talking about SNL. That's a gripe I've been wanting to talk about for a while though, because I always see, and it's usually one subsect of the this country especially, who's just like, it's been funny. It's like, you haven't fucking watched it in how long? I hate when people say it sucks and then they never watch it though.
I'll say this: the last 2 episodes have been pretty good. I actually like. I would say at SNL mainly, I watch 2 things regularly, which is the news and the cold open. Everything else depends on who's the guest that night. The last 2, I think, what was it? Aubrey Plaza was really good, and what's his name from The Mandalorian was actually pretty good. Pedro Pascal and Last of Us.
I watched some of the sketches with Michael B. Jordan, and that was pretty good too. Can't remember. See, I'm like Dan. I usually just watch the cold open, the weekend update, and some of the sketches depending on the guest, but I don't watch them live. But yeah, like Michael B. Jordan, he was okay. Aubrey Plaza, that was a funny one, and can't remember. There was another one I saw this year that was pretty good, but regardless, we digressed too far.
Yeah.
And also, we're over an hour, so we should probably wrap this up here.
What you still gotta do is Amazon rant.
Fuck. Thanks for reminding me. So, Mr. Notes, before we go, you had a little bit of tiff with Mr. Bezos' company. It seems that what he did was, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of gave you the boot for absolutely no reason and just deleted all your work off of Amazon and Kindle.
Yeah, I guess I have to back up to October of 2021. I was doing a neighborhood outdoor art festival the day before I went to Baltimore Comic-Con. I was like, all right, let me warm up here, and then the next morning I'll go to Baltimore Comic-Con. And I was doing really this little local festival in Richmond, and at one point I go to check my email during a slower period, and I look there, and it's like, here's something from Amazon KDP. I'm like, let me take a look, and I open it up, and it says like, your book Adam and Eve, Bizarre Love Triangle, yada yada, has been found to have material that goes against our standards and practices. Your book has been taken off, and your account has been canceled. I'm like, this is literally the day before I go to Baltimore Comic-Con, and I still had a good, I want to say 15 or 20 people that I had to get their books to, possibly even more. And that's not what you want to go often hear about Baltimore, especially like, I will give Amazon credit. They put out really good product, and the turnover time was super fast, and the prices could not be beat. So I spent like a month going back and forth after I got back from Baltimore. I went through all the hoops. I filled a formal complaint. I got on the phone maybe 3 or 4 times and just kept being led for like half an hour, 45 minutes at a time, before either they tell me like, no, they can't help me, or I would just be disconnected.
No.
After a month, I just said, screw it. I'm not going to get anything out of them. I give up.
when you saw that, did you shit your pants and then cry, or did you cry first and then shit your pants? Because I would be devastated.
Both simultaneously.
Just an explosion of every end.
Yeah.
I would just be devastated. Like, you had a lot of work through there, so it's just like, oh, I have all this stuff set up.
I also find it funny that they took you off because of the stuff didn't meet their standard practice, but yet you can buy like a rubber vagina.
Well, they didn't even tell them what the problem. Usually, it's a copyright thing.
Or dinosaur COVID-19 erotica.
Yeah. Well, that's sophisticated.
Yeah.
No, don't besmirch that.
Yeah, that's very highbrow.
I'll never measure up to that glorious standard.
And then your Amazon reviews gone. The way people they search Dan Nokes, and then his books come up and they could go, oh, here's the Amazon link. It's got this many stars. Easy.
I mean, it does have one happy ending. Like afterwards, I'm like, you know what? Now that I'm going through this other company, eventually I wound up at a place called Mix. I mean, I like their product. They put up good stuff. But I'm like, all right, I'm going to revise this cover to Adam and Eve slightly. If they're going to screw me over, I'm going to profit on this to a small degree. So on the top right corner, there's a little sticker that says banned from Amazon.
That's a good way to, that's a good idea.
Whenever I have my Adam and Eve book with me, I lead off with that was banned from Amazon.
This is the one thing you can't get on Amazon.
If Ron DeSantis has taught us anything, banned books sell more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, like, the people tell me now, it's like, oh, I got banned from Twitter. I got banned from Facebook. Like, I was banned from Amazon. I'm like, really? Tell me more.
The most, money-hungry, grubbing corporation on the earth. They're just like, no, we don't want to sell your product.
Yeah.
Make money off of it.
And when I asked them point blank, I was like, why am I being banned? It's like, you violated terms of service. Okay, but what terms specifically did I violate? It's like, well, when you filled out when you agreed to the terms of service, we were no longer under any obligation to tell you what terms of service you violated. That's some circular logic right there. That doesn't help my problem out any. So I have no way to defend myself.
Or even to fix whatever the so-called problem is. Like, if it was, whatever it was, if it was something you could go back and correct or whatever, then to get back on. But if they can't even tell you.
Yeah, like I said, it's like, I don't. You would think something like this would start with a warning and like, here, this is what you did wrong. We're taking the book down. Correct this, resubmit it, and it just went straight to you're banned. I'm like, what? Like, I thought you guys liked money, and I was giving you money to make end product for me. Do you do this to a lot of people, or was it just me in particular?
Did you make fun of or satirize Jeff Bezos in any of your work?
Not yet, but it's gonna work.
Not yet.
I would just love to think that Jeff Bezos was reading every one of his books and was just like, fuck.
I haven't gotten to the villain reveal and chicken battered and fried, so it's a thought.
That's a good thought.
Let's just say the bad guy's gonna be bald.
As long as you don't say his name, you can't get sued. You have his likeness, which is easy because he could look like Lex Luthor, so it's fine. Jeez, I would want to punch everybody in the world if that happened to me. Like, that's just so stupid. It's like, we can't tell. They can't at least tell me why. You know?
Yeah.
Literally, it cost me a good 2 to 3 months of my life just figuring out A, finding a new printer, B, reformatting it and submitting it and figuring out which one was it. Like, I went through probably a good another 2 or 3 printers, and trying to get all right, send me a sample and figure out, okay, how much is this going to cost? Like, I tried Barnes and Noble, but I mean, their prices were cost prohibitive for what I was trying to do. I went through another 2 or 3 printers after that, and basically, before I landed on these the guys that I have now. But again, it took me. I had to sit there and totally reformat the book or the pages to whatever size that they had to offer me.
Oh, that's like a major pain in the ass. Like, I hate doing that kind of stuff anyway. So having to do just the whole thing like that, it's always something stupid, But it's like, give me an explanation. Come on.
Yeah, it was taxing. Is taxing a good word? Frustrating.
Soul crushing.
I would say aggravating would be a good one.
Ball crushing.
Yeah, there we go. Scrotum annihilating. There we go.
Yeah, the annihilation of the scrotum and the soul. I would imagine the spirit was at least dented. That's hard to dent a spirit, but I think your spirit was fairly. I've seen your rants about it. Yeah, damage. Well, now that that's over, the anger, we'll let that subside. The folks can find you at 21sandshark.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then your Facebook, which is always a happening spot. Is that just Dan Nokes?
Yes.
I never know how the @ works. Like, we have a DPW one. I always forget.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I think I changed the name because it was like a bunch of numbers and shit. You're on the Twitter, but I believe when you are on the Twitter, you probably just do what I do and just look at irritating news things that are recommended to you and don't want to tweet anything.
I'm starting to engage with it, but I'm trying to resist the more trollish aspects of it. But there's just so many idiots on there.
Yeah.
I just like, oh, I gotta say something. But I use it mainly for work. I want to say Facebook I understand the most because I'm pretty verbose. It's like Twitter just is like, you can only use 280 characters, but it makes you more clever. It's like, no, it doesn't. That just, it's the opposite of that. Is that
makes your grammar poorer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking you're saving a whole lot of time with abbreviations. It's like what are you gonna do with all that 3.5 seconds that you gained?
Yeah. Well,
finally take a vacation with the wife and kids. Yeah.
I've given up on Twitter more or less. I was doing fairly well there with engagement, and then I must have insulted the wrong celebrity or something because all of a sudden nobody was seeing my stuff, and I thought, oh, that's weird, but I couldn't prove it until Mr. Elon Musk implemented you can view like how many views your tweets got, and I could look at older ones compared to the ones now. I was like, wow, this has got 5 views. Like, nobody's seeing my stuff. What's the point? That's my own gripe, though. The Twitter was kind of shitting the bed for a long time there. Now it's just like, it's a fun place just to see the chaos, really.
Yeah.
Well, you're on Instagram, too. You just post like your art and stuff. I have a hard time being able to master Instagram because I don't know. As a writer,
yeah, it's kind of hard.
Comics are a little easier because you can at least publish the art and stuff. But as a writer, it's like, well, what the fuck am I posting? So yes, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and your website. That's where the folks can find you. You folks can find us at DPW Podcast on the same things. And did you want to, Miss Sue Rowland? Did you want to shout her out or her website or anything for her editing skills?
For her editing stuff, just get a hold of me and I can plug you into her stuff. Also, she's just started a cooking show called Kitchen Witchin'.
Ooh, is that on YouTube?
Yeah. There's the first video's out, and I believe the second video is coming out soon. Yeah, she's out on that now.
Are you involved, or is the chicken involved?
Not as of yet, but we've discussed me coming on and cooking on one of my favorite dishes or two. And no, it is not chicken croquettes.
I was gonna say that might be kind of messed up if you have the chicken sitting there watching as you making chicken. Like,
what was it? I put up a chicken picture of like Bacchus Kickstarter. He'll have to sell his children again, and I just got a whole case of eggs sitting in front of him. Someone on Instagram, I posted that on Instagram, and somebody just the one comment that somebody put on there is like, "Not funny." I'm like, okay, I thought it was hilarious, but
you done pissed off the vegan folk. They're already mad that you love prime rib so much, and now you're really getting them with the eggs.
No, like I said, I just found out. I was like, why do you not? Is it a vegan thing or is it a egg shortage thing? Just be more specific next time.
Well, now if you buy eggs, you're like the 1%. So
yeah, right.
Like, people are furious that you eat the rich, eat the eggs. All right, well, because I have to edit almost an hour and 20 minutes of this now, I think we should probably end it.
All right, sounds good.
Before we go ahead and promote your Kickstarter one more time. If anybody's listening this far, I don't imagine why they would, but if they are.
Yes, to your 6.5 listeners, my Kickstarter is called Chicken Battered and Fried. It is currently on Kickstarter, and it will be running until March 4th at approximately 6:13 in the morning. If you got a chance, go check it out. We got a whole bunch of great rewards on there, ranging from paperback versions. We're actually going to have some great artists on there, including a alt cover by Dan Parent, who did some work with Archie. We have some great pinup artists who are Kickstarter stretch goal rewards. including Dana Black, Brian Lacey, Tim Shin, and what I'm really super excited for is if we get up to $7,500, we get to bring on Jeff Senior, who is one of my big bucket list artists that I would love to have doing some of my stuff. He did work on Transformers, Death's Head in the 80s and 90s, and I'm super stoked if I can get raise enough funds to get him on there.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, folks, make sure you check that out. And just for your information, Mr. Dan, we have 11 solid and consistent listeners in Germany, so you might get big in Germany off of this, just so you know.
Hey, Guten Tag.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, folks, we thank you for listening. If you want us to have more guests, I guess tell us, suggest somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know. We always think, hey, we should do guests, and then I'm like, that's a lot of prep work. But anyway.
But it is fun, though.
It is. It always comes out well. So we thank you again, Dan, and guess we'll have to check you later and all that fun stuff. So catch you later, guys.